Welcome, everyone. My name is Keelan Whitmore, and I'm the Rehearsal Director and Community Liaison for BalletX. And I'm here today with Loughlan Prior, one of our guest choreographers who will premiere his piece in our summer series in July. Welcome, Loughlan.
Thank you so much. It's very exciting. Can't
Yeah,
wait.
really excited to find out a little bit more about who Loughlan is. So
Yeah.
you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself. Where do you come from? Where have you been? Where are you now? Where are you headed?
So I like to think of myself a bit as a citizen of the world, but I'm originally from Australia and I grew up there. Um, I started dancing when I was like 5, and my parents took me to ballet, I think, because I was a very hyperactive child and it focused my energy and attention. And I've never looked back since then. I trained predominantly in Australia. I went to like a performing arts high school. So I used to do academic and then dance. And then I went to New Zealand to further my training. Um, and that led me to getting a role with the Royal New Zealand Ballet, where I was a dancer for 10 years, had a lovely career there. And while I was kind of in the last 5 years of my career dancing, I started choreographing, and that sort of really took over. And I became the resident choreographer there in 2018. And now I'm freelance and I am currently based in London with my partner and working internationally, which is very, very exciting.
Wonderful,
My
wonderful.
life story. Yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations. And what a wonderful transition, of course. And could you tell me a little bit about how your perspective as a choreographer has changed from that first ballet that you choreographed to where you are now?
Yeah, I think when I look back, I always wanted to create, and I think dance was always a vessel for being able to tell stories, and that's a big thing that comes into my work. I
Mhm.
consider myself a storyteller. So I think there's a narrative element to all of my work, and I can sort of trace that back to the very beginning. The first piece I think I ever created was on my siblings when I was 4 years old, bossing them around.
Mhm.
Um, and I guess the growth choreographically for me was also alongside my performance and um, creative career, working with working with guest choreographers that would come in. I really enjoyed that, and you sort of um, I'm a big believer in learning from doing.
Yeah.
So I would just, uh, by osmosis, grab all of the interesting ideas, techniques, and the way they sort of would conduct themselves. And then it's interesting because when I first joined the Royal New Zealand Ballet, I said to myself, every year I'd like to make a tiny little piece and start creating a body of work. And I would recommend that to anyone who has choreographic aspirations. Start very small, so that might just be a solo. And then the next year, I made a duet, and then it got bigger and bigger until after 10 years, yeah, my 10th year, I created a full length for the company, which was like a 2-hour show with a brand new score and designs and the whole shebang. So um, I think baby steps is the key to transitioning and sort of proving yourself not only to others, but to yourself that it's not too daunting. And um, yeah, and that you're ready for it.
And I imagine that some of your experiences, especially going from Australia and then transferring to New Zealand, what are some key experiences or influences that have shaped your choreographic style or your approach to choreographing?
I'm a big movie buff,
Mm.
and I also got my start creating short films and also just watching the work of filmmakers as well as other choreographers. So I guess that's fused in with my work. It's hard to define a style because I do feel that every project I do, I approach from a different vantage point, depending on if it's narrative, if it's abstract,
Yeah.
if it's for the stage, if it's an installation piece. And I find that quite refreshing. A lot of people ask me how, yeah, I would define my style, and I still don't really know. I guess I'm still discovering what that is. I'm versatile. If you say make this, I will make it.
Yeah, I think for many choreographers, every creation process is different. I remember working with my former company, and it was with one choreographer, but every creation process was like we just met, though we knew each other, which is really, really exciting. So it kept it fresh
Oh,
for
that's great.
a long time. Yeah, it was
It
really, really,
keeps it it keeps it exciting and invigorating.
yeah.
Otherwise, yeah, you're just sort of retreading the same thing, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah. And so could you tell us a little bit about your latest work as a choreographer? What themes or ideas are you exploring, and what creative processes did you use to develop the piece? So this is what has happened in the past.
Yeah,
His
the
work.
last work that I created, I'm just trying to think, there's so many. I'm gonna say that it was Cinderella for the Royal New Zealand Ballet, but this was a very different story approach. We threw out the Prokofiev score and we decided to write our own music, which kind of reflected the story. We chucked that out. It was sort of a feminist queer retelling of Cinderella through the eyes of Cinderella and also Prince Charming. So essentially, she um, says no to the prince when the shoe fits and chooses to be with the one she loves, who is a guy that she's known throughout her whole life growing up. And then the prince, in the end, falls in love with Prince Dashing and comes out to his mother, the queen, with the help of the fairy godmother.
Mhm.
What was the question? No.
Yeah.
Waffling.
Your latest work. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that was really fun to explore, rewriting a story, a classic story, and then how the choreography fit into that with new designs and music. And the piece that I'm working on developing for BalletX has similar irreverent ideas. It's a celebration of queer joy of camp, something I really like to put in my work.
We'll get into that.
It's
We'll get into that a little bit. Yeah, for sure.
okay.
Yeah. So it seems like you pull from a lot of your personal experiences or experiences that are already established, like in storytelling, the story of Cinderella. What message or emotions do you aim to convey through your work? Are there specific themes or narratives that consistently inspire you? Or do you also change along with your process the different themes or different processes?
I think above anything, I want an audience to be captivated in what I do. So I also think there's so much doom and gloom in the world that I try to keep it light. I'm really interested in, yeah, excavating joy and having that in my work. It makes it fun in the studio as well. And I
Mm-hmm.
really feel that there's a great rapport and connection with the artists that I'm working with. Um, yeah, thematically, I like to go everywhere. In the storytelling that I do, I think I'm pretty erratic as well. So one piece might have many different things that kind of all combine together so that you're sampling lots of different feelings or emotions when you're watching the piece, and it's never boring. It's always quick, rapid fire to the next emotional idea and connecting
Mm-hmm.
those together. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's a hard one to sort of talk about sometimes because um, what the emotion that you imbue into a work is very personal, and you might be feeling that, and that's the sense that you've generated in the studio with the dancers. but then the audience might reflecting and have their own interpretation. So I don't always like to, put a label on it.
Yeah. What are some of the most interesting conversations you've had with audience members, in regards to what your goal was, and then what they actually interpreted, and what kind of conversations have you had with audience members? How was that as a choreographer?
Oh, it's really interesting actually when I would say, especially for an abstract work that you create,
Yeah.
to just talking with an audience afterwards and just without giving any context what they've interpreted from it.
Mm-hmm.
So many different things. People, I think, innately want to put a story on top of work. They need to make sense of it. So, um, like one moment in particular, someone thought that the piece was, about teapots and coffee, and I was like, interesting.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
was very abstract. It was like dancers were sort of, I guess, intertwined and fluid and pouring movements, and this person um, interpreted that as a beverage.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I find it very interesting, and I find it different in the different cultures. Like the conversations that I would have with audience members in the States versus those in Europe. On that, most people really, really are not afraid to have an opinion about work, even if it's abstract or even if it's not so literal. They take ownership in making a choice about what they just saw. And having those conversations is always rather interesting to say, oh, I like that you've taken and you've made a choice about how is that as a choreographer when they make a choice about what your piece?
I love it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, I think it's great. It's the beauty of art, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That people can take away anything from it, and it surprises you. I kind of am delighted really when I get very completely diametrically opposed ideas from what I was actually thinking in the creation. If you haven't read the program notes, which sometimes it's not a good thing to do, you just, informed by what you see in front of you. It's fascinating and
Yeah.
always entertaining as well.
And do you find there's also a difference between having conversations with dancers versus non-dancers? Like, what is that like? And do you lean towards one conversation or the other, or are they both equally as subjective? Um,
Yeah, it's very different. I think, well, dancers they're in the form, they know what they're looking at really well, and they tend to talk about the technique and the risk and the athleticism and the performance, whereas maybe how do I put this politely, a non-dancer or a
I
yeah,
sometimes say pedestrian, but I feel like that might be offensive.
it's a bit offensive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Someone that hasn't danced before
Yeah.
professionally
Mhm.
um, has a wildly different approach and appreciation. And in some ways, I feel like they appreciate it more because it's just like so incredibly awe-inspiring that people can actually physically do that with their bodies.
Yeah.
And the concepts and things that, because I mean, we live our lives really with a lot of context.
Mhm.
Everything is something. So dancers dance has that amazing language to just sort of like throw paint at the canvas, and it is what it is. And yeah, that's why I love it too.
Yeah. So can you share some insights or behind the scenes details about your collaboration with BalletX from your new work? What excites you the most about this project, and what can audiences expect from the performance?
So I have already done a 2-day Zoom rehearsal, and I could already tell that it was going to be a really special piece. I think the the artists at BalletX are really exciting. They're all so different, and I don't know, the work that I'm creating is called Macaroni, and I think it really lends itself to individual people coming together to make this whole cool world on stage. It's called Macaroni because it's based on the Macaronies, who were these kind of the original camp aristocrats from the 1770s. And when I do a project, I tend to maybe indulge in my research, and for this, I definitely have gone down like an excavatory hole where I've just, yeah, there's so many references in this. The idea of the macaroni and essentially what is the first recorded kind of figures of camp and queer, but also queer phobia and satire against them is really interesting. And it got me thinking how much that character, even though it, you know, the macaronis existed hundreds of years ago, we're still facing similar issues towards the LGBTQI plus community. And without being too political, because I want this work to really be a celebration of pride, we are touching on some of those issues, kind of, I guess, reclaiming some of that fabulosity against the haters, for want of a word. And in fact, in my research, the very famous Yankee Doodle anthem, which was written in 1780 around the Revolutionary War, it is really interesting that the line Yankee Doodle went to town riding on a pony, stuck a feather in his cap and called it macaroni is where we're kind of basing the work on the idea of that macaroni. They were these fabulous, flamboyant, aristocratic types with big wigs and feathers in their hats. And it's interesting that the song has now become a patriotic anthem, and I believe it's still in some forms performed or sung today.
Yeah.
And yeah, just how the lineage of that comes all the way back to present day. So there's a lot of different influences that will find their way into the piece in a 23-minute piece.
Yeah. It's always interesting with the different choreographers that come through, the ideas that they hold on to or that they start to research and delve into. And it's fantastic that you have that you've dived so deeply into this one. And it's interesting also the collaborators that you're working with, they also dive very deeply. Can you tell us a little bit about the costume designer and the composer and some of those elements that you're collaborating with?
Yeah, so one of the pleasures of being a choreographer is the chance to not only collaborate with the dancers on the movement, but to work with incredible artists in design and composition. So this particular project, I'm working with two of my best friends, Claire Cowan, who's composing an original score, and Emma Kingsbury, who's created some fabulous new designs. And it's just, it doesn't feel like work. We're just literally having a good time making and creating art together. The costumes are these kind of, I'm obsessed with like citron green, and so I was like, let's make them that. And they kind of are a more psychedelic version of literal macaroni, mac and cheese. But then we've got these sort of printed images of the macaronis as they were depicted in the penny press back in the day. It's kind of the first actual satirical use of cartoons in newspapers. And there's some crazy fluorescent wigs wiglets, we're calling them, and also the Macaronies used to play shuttlecock or badminton, so we're going to be playing with that. This is the kind of the color. And then Claire is developing a really interesting score using instruments of the time. So very much a harpsichord. She's been bashing away on her harpsichord in her studio, plus samples of different camp icons like Liberace and Celine Dion and you name it, infused within that. So I'm really interested to hear that kind of crazy melange of different influences from way back to present day. Yeah, it's going to be a lot.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot, and it sounds really, really exciting. And we've had some really wonderful conversations, and we just can't wait for you to come to Philadelphia and to really dive in, to continue to dive in with the dancers. And that's the wonderful thing I think also about BalletX and choreographers. To be a choreographer is essentially play. You know, we're in a sandbox and we're able to create and focus on things and to give the audience as well as ourselves something fun to munch on, something fun to chew on. So
100%.
we're really, really excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me
Thank
today.
you. I can't wait to be there in a few short weeks and
Yeah.
get started on this awesome creation. Very excited.
Well, best of luck with the continuation of your research, and we'll see you soon. Thank you, Loughlan.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye.